There was a sign chained to my front gate that said, "Access revoked by HOA authority." A security guard I'd never seen before told my wife and me we were trespassing on our own damn property. Then Karen called the cops, smiling like she'd already won. All right, buckle up. I'll tell you how we ended up there, standing in our own driveway like squatters while some power-tripping HOA president tried to get us hauled off in cuffs. But to understand how it got that insane, you gotta know what came before. When my wife, Allison, and I first moved into Riverside Meadows, it felt like we'd finally made it. Quiet neighborhood, decent-sized backyard, good schools nearby, neighbors who waved when you drove by, real American dream kind of place. We'd been grinding for years to buy a place like this. I was still doing government cybersecurity contracts at the time, working from home mostly, and Allison had just opened her own veterinary practice downtown. We were low-key people. We kept our heads down, paid our dues, didn't go looking for trouble, but trouble has a funny way of finding you when you're just trying to live in peace. Our house, man. I loved that place. I picked it for the oak tree in the backyard, alone. You know that feeling when a place just feels right the second you walk through the door? That was it for us. We painted the walls ourselves, built out the garage together, planted tomatoes that only sprouted twice but made us stupidly proud. We even adopted a stray beagle from the clinic that decided he liked our porch more than the street. That little house was ours. Not just legally, emotionally. It was home in every sense of the word. Now, as much as Riverside Meadows looked like a peaceful slice of suburbia, there was one dark cloud that never quite drifted away. Her name was Karen Sloan. Karen became president of the HOA within 3 months of moving in. No one even saw it coming. She showed up with this fake polished charm, baked cookies for the first board meeting, and then steamrolled her way into power like she was running for state senate. Except there were no debates, no real elections, just a couple of volunteers bowing out, and next thing you know, she's holding the gavel. And look, I'm not the guy who hates authority for the sake of it. I've worn a uniform. I respect rules, when they make sense. But Karen didn't enforce rules to make the neighborhood better. She enforced them to control people. And once she had that HOA title, it was like she put on a crown none of us could see, but we damn sure felt. At first, it was small stuff. Passive-aggressive flyers about lawn height, warning letters about trash cans not being put away within the 30-minute window after pickup. Then came the surprise inspections. The fines. The public shaming on the community Facebook page. She even wrote a whole post about someone's unapproved mailbox color once. Spoiler, it was beige. Allison tried to give her the benefit of the doubt in the beginning. Maybe she's just really into order, she said once after Karen dinged us for a non-compliant flower bed border. I wanted to believe that, but I knew better. I've seen people like Karen before. Hell, I've worked with people like her. Give them a little power and they build an empire out of it. Doesn't matter if it's a neighborhood or a nation. They crave control and they get mean when you don't fall in line. The thing is, I kept my mouth shut. For a long time. We just wanted to live in peace. Allison and I figured if we followed the rules and kept our heads down, she'd eventually get bored and move on to some other poor family. But instead, she doubled down. There were times when I'd leave town for a work trip, and Allison would call me upset because Karen had stopped by just to check on things. No notice, just showed up and started pointing out violations. Once, she walked around to our backyard and left a warning about our compost bin being visible from a neighboring lot. We don't even have a compost bin, but we swallowed it. We always paid the fines, gritted our teeth, and stayed polite. Why? Because I didn't want a war. I didn't want to be that guy, the one everyone sees arguing on the lawn, the one who ends up on YouTube yelling about bylaws while holding a rake like a battle axe. So we waited. We stayed quiet. We thought we could outlast her. Turns out Karen wasn't just annoying. She wasn't just controlling. She was dangerous. We took 1 week off. Just 1 damn week. Allison had been drowning in back-to-back emergency cases at her clinic, and I'd just wrapped a brutal 2-month contract with Homeland. We needed a break, so we left town for Colorado. Fresh air, no HOA, nobody telling you your porch light is too bright for night aesthetics. It was supposed to be peaceful. When we pulled back into our driveway, sunburned and full of gas station snacks, we were met with that sign. Bold red letters, big metal chain. A security guard that looked like he was auditioning for a mall cop reboot. And Karen, oh Karen, waiting like a snake in the grass. And that, my friend, is where all hell broke loose. So we're pulling up the driveway, half listening to some true crime podcast. The kind where the narrator talks real slow, like they're trying to scare you. I wasn't paying attention to the episode. I was too focused on how good it felt to be home. We'd been gone a week, and even though Colorado was amazing, there's nothing like seeing your front porch after you've been living out of a suitcase. But right away, I knew something was off. Our gate, normally wide open, was shut. Not just shut. Chained. I'm talking thick-ass chain with a sign zip-tied right through the middle. Access revoked, HOA violation, entry prohibited until further notice. I thought it was a prank at first, some dumb high schooler messing around. But no, there was a uniformed security guard standing by the mailbox. He looked like he took himself very seriously. Big guy, maybe 50s, shaved head, aviator glasses like he thought he was guarding a nuclear silo. On his chest, one of those cheap plastic badges that said Riverside Private Security. Allison put the car in park and just stared at him. Then at me, then back at him. She said, is he guarding our house? I got out slowly, trying to give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there'd been a gas leak, maybe a bear broke in and trashed the kitchen. But the second my foot hit the driveway, security guy stepped forward like he was trained for this moment. Sir, he barked, I need to see identification and proof of residence before I can allow you on the property. I blinked. I'm sorry, what? This property has been flagged for HOA violation and is temporarily restricted. Please present ID and documentation showing you live here. I looked at Allison. She looked at me, and in that moment I could tell we were both thinking the same thing. Oh, hell no. I took a breath and tried to stay calm. We own this house, I said, reaching for the suitcase in the trunk. We've lived here for 3 years. You're standing on my driveway. He didn't move, just gripped his radio like he was about to call in a SWAT team. Orders from Ms. Sloan, he said. No exceptions. And that's when her name hit me like a cold splash of water. Karen Sloan. Of course, who else? I stepped back, took another look at the sign, and then noticed the printed violation sheet stapled under it. It was dated 4 days ago, said our vehicle had been seen parked improperly in violation of Section 4.2.1b of the HOA guidelines, which made exactly 0 sense, because we'd parked the car in our garage before we left for the airport, locked the place up tight. Nobody had access, and unless our car had grown legs and wandered outside for a sunbath, there was no way in hell it could have been visible, much less in violation, while we were gone. Something about that report made the hairs on my arms stand up. It wasn't just wrong, it was fabricated. Someone made it up, and they did it knowing we weren't home to contest it. It wasn't just petty anymore, it was targeted. Allison walked over to the gate, eyes scanning the sign, the chain, the lock. She wasn't saying much, but I could feel her anger like static in the air. Calm on the outside, but boiling underneath. We didn't violate anything, she said firmly, looking at the guard. We've been out of town. Our car's been locked in the garage the entire week. He didn't respond, just shifted uncomfortably like he suddenly wasn't sure he was on the right team. And then, as if summoned by our rage, she appeared. I swear to you, I could hear the damn click of her designer sandals against the pavement before I even saw her. Karen Sloan walking down the sidewalk like she was strutting onto a movie set. Blonde bob, sunglasses the size of pancakes, hot pink tracksuit that probably cost more than our flight to Colorado. She had a clipboard under one arm and a Starbucks cup in the other. You know the type. She smiled when she saw us. Not the welcome back kind of smile, the I've been waiting for this moment all week kind of smile. Well, 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 she chirped. Look who finally decided to return. Hope you had a nice little vacation because this might be your last one from this address. I honestly thought she was joking, like some weird HOA version of stand-up comedy. But then she nodded at the guard like she was giving an executive order, and I realized, nope, she was dead serious. I'd advise you to comply with security protocol, she said, sipping her drink. Until you provide proper documentation and attend your violation hearing, your access is officially suspended. Allison stepped forward, voice low and tight. This is our home. You don't have the right to block us from entering it. Karen didn't blink. We absolutely do, under emergency enforcement clauses. Section 9.4. Look it up. Now I have read the HOA bylaws. Boring as hell, but necessary. And I knew for a fact that Section 9.4 had nothing to do with barring people from their property. It was about landscaping during drought conditions. But Karen was banking on us not knowing that. She turned to walk away and then stopped, looked over her shoulder. If you refuse to leave, I'll be forced to call the police. And she smiled when she said it. Not out of fear, not because she felt threatened. Number. That smile said everything. It said this wasn't about rules, it wasn't about parking, it was personal. She wanted to humiliate us. So yeah, that was the first shot fired. A fake violation, a forged report, a stranger blocking our gate, all orchestrated by a woman who thought she could run the neighborhood like her own private kingdom. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, is that I'd spent the last decade of my life finding holes in digital security for a living, and that I wasn't just some quiet IT guy in a hoodie. She picked the wrong driveway. The cops showed up fast. Faster than I expected, honestly. Like they'd been circling the block, waiting for Karen to hit speed dial. 2 cruisers rolled up, lights flashing but no sirens, and both parked like it was a drug bust. Allison and I were standing by our locked-up gate, arms crossed, trying to keep our cool while Karen stood off to the side with her hands on her hips like she was about to get a medal. The security guard? He was starting to sweat. Literally. The guy had the posture of someone slowly realizing he was on the wrong side of a dumb war. He didn't say a word when the officers stepped out. Just kept fiddling with his radio like it might save him. The first cop, Officer Jenkins, looked like he'd done this dance before. Tall, clean uniform, the kind of tired face you only get from decades of watching neighbors lose their minds over shrubs and fences. His partner, Martinez, hung back by the car, taking in the scene. Karen jumped in before Jenkins could even ask a question. She practically sprinted to him. "Officers, thank God you're here," she said, like she was calling in an exorcism. "These 2 broke onto restricted property and are refusing to leave. They've been aggressive, threatening my security officer, and have violated multiple HOA mandates. They're trespassing." It was a performance, I'll give her that. She sounded just concerned enough to make it plausible, and just theatrical enough to make you roll your eyes if you had a brain. Jenkins listened, nodded once, then turned to us. "Sir, ma'am," he said, calm and professional, "can I see some ID and anything proving you live here?" I pulled out my license and the mortgage statement I kept in the glove box, habit from my army days, paper trail ready at all times. "This is our home," I said. "We've lived here for 3 years. We were on vacation this past week. Got back an hour ago and found this sign and a guy we've never seen before telling us we're not allowed inside." He looked over the papers, then looked at Karen. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation giving you or the HOA the authority to block access to this property?" Karen's confident smirk faltered for the first time. I do," she stammered, digging into a manila folder she clearly slapped together that morning. "This is the violation report. They broke the parking ordinance last Thursday, section 4.2.1-B. They were warned, and they refused to respond." Officer Martinez stepped over to review the paperwork. His eyebrows went up. He turned toward Karen. "Ma'am, this says their vehicle was seen violating HOA policy on Thursday?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Improper parking. It was clearly visible from the street. We issued a citation. They ignored it." Martinez tilted his head. "But according to them and based on their travel documents, they weren't even in the state last Thursday. And there's no witness signature here, no timestamp, no photos. You filed this yourself?" Karen's voice got high and tight. "I don't need photographic evidence. The violation was observed. That's sufficient." It was like watching someone try to bluff at poker with 3 napkins and a paperclip. Jenkins stayed polite, but you could tell he wasn't buying it. He turned back to me. "You're free to enter your home, sir." And just like that, the chain was cut. Literally. Jenkins told the security guy to unlock it, and the dude didn't hesitate. He practically tripped over himself getting the bolt cutter. Karen stood frozen. I swear, if she had a mustache, she'd have been twirling it and muttering curses. But the kicker? That's when the second cop car's passenger door opened, and he stepped out. Roughly 6 feet tall, solid build, hair grayer than I remembered, but still had that same intense presence I'd known from a lifetime ago. Detective Ray Kowalski, the man who used to share a bunker with me in Kandahar, who once broke his nose headbutting a laptop because he couldn't get a VPN to connect, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, and he was walking toward me like it was just another Tuesday. "Derek?" he called out, squinting in the sun. "Ray?" I said, feeling the confusion roll across Karen's face like a slow wave. He grinned. "Captain Hunter, what the hell are you doing in the middle of a neighborhood pissing match?" Boom! There it was. Those 2 words, Captain Hunter, landed like a sledgehammer. Karen looked like her soul had just short-circuited. "Captain?" she repeated like the word was in a foreign language. Ray looked at her, all business now. "Yeah, ma'am, Derek here was a captain in U.S. Army Cyber Command. 3 tours, multiple commendations, and one of the best damn intel analysts I ever worked with." Silence, the kind that makes birds shut up. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I think she wanted to say something, but her face hadn't caught up to her brain yet. Ray looked at me again. "Seriously, though, what the hell's going on?" I told him. Not everything, but enough. The fake violation, the chain, the security, the whole setup. Ray's expression darkened. He glanced at Karen. "Ma'am, do you know that filing false police reports is a criminal offense?" She bristled. "Excuse me?" "And," Ray added, "abusing an HOA position to harass homeowners could fall under civil liability, if not worse, depending on intent." Her whole posture shifted. She didn't speak. She twitched, like a TV losing signal. Meanwhile, across the street, I noticed something important. People were watching. A lot of people. Curtains pulled back, garage doors halfway open, neighbors pretending to water plants that didn't need watering. They'd seen the chain, they'd seen the police, and now they were seeing Karen unravel. But then, out of nowhere, Allison stepped closer to me and leaned in. "I've been checking the HOA member portal," she whispered. "The budget records? They're full of weird charges, thousands of dollars for community improvements we never approved, payments to companies I've never heard of." I nodded, barely blinking. "Take screenshots, all of it." Because now it wasn't just about a chain on our gate, it was about what Karen didn't want us to see, and I had a very strong feeling this violation was never about parking at all. It was about shutting us up before we could uncover something much, much bigger. I didn't go nuclear right away. I mean, yeah, I wanted to. Part of me wanted to drag Karen into a courtroom that same day and slap down every violation letter she'd ever printed. But the rational part of me, the side that spent years in the Army getting told wait for confirmation before you pull the trigger, that part told me to slow down. Try the calm route first. Be the reasonable one. Document everything. Build the case. Give them a chance to do the right thing. That was my first mistake. The morning after the police cut the chain off our gate, I called the HOA office. Not Karen directly, God no, but the general office line. I asked to speak with someone neutral. Maybe a board member who wasn't glued to Karen's side like a barnacle. I got routed to Ted Miller, who apparently served as the HOA's communications liaison. Ted sounded nervous the second he picked up, like he knew this call was coming and had rehearsed for it in the mirror. "Mr. Hunter," he said, voice tight, "we understand there's been a misunderstanding. There's no need to escalate things further. The violation report was submitted according to procedure." "Stop," I said. "Ted, look, we both know that report was crap. I'm not calling to yell. I just want to understand why this happened. Who approved it? Who decided we should be locked out of our own home?" There was silence, then some keyboard clacking. I imagined him scrolling through some internal HOA portal, trying to figure out what he was allowed to tell me. "Well," he finally said, "the report was filed directly by President Sloan. It was approved by 2 other board members during a special session." "Was there a vote?" "Technically, no, it was an emergency resolution under Clause 7.3. I exhaled slowly. Clause 7.3, I remembered it. That was the clause Karen liked to twist into a pretzel anytime she wanted to bypass a formal vote. It was meant for genuine emergencies, storm damage, downed power lines, that kind of thing. Not parking violations. I asked Ted to send me a copy of the meeting, minutes and the violation record. He said, "Of course." I never got it. A few days passed. Allison and I tried to get back to normal, but the vibe in the neighborhood had shifted. Some people stopped waving. Others looked like they wanted to, but were scared to. It was like our house had a target on it now. Then came the fines. Every morning for a week straight, a new letter appeared on our porch. Not mailed, placed, as if someone was hand-delivering HOA citations like morning newspapers. One was for unapproved garden edging. Another claimed our recycling bins weren't positioned correctly. One even said we violated the visual harmony clause by storing firewood too close to our side fence. Firewood. In July, it was coordinated harassment, plain and simple, a paper trail of nonsense meant to bury us in fees, warnings, and stress. Death by 1,000 clerical cuts. I emailed the HOA again. Then I sent a certified letter. I stayed polite. I laid everything out, our travel dates, the falsified violation, the unlawful gate lock, the intimidation tactics. I asked for a formal review, a meeting, something. No response. So I showed up at the next public board meeting. It was held in the clubhouse, the one next to the pool nobody ever used because the water was always freezing and smelled like a bleach bomb went off in it. I got there early, took a seat up front, and waited. When Karen walked in, flanked by her usual backup dancers, Patty something, the guy with the fake smile and Bluetooth in one ear, and Ted, who looked like he wanted to melt into the carpet, she made a point not to look at me. The meeting started. They discussed fence height regulations, summer picnic budgets, and a whole 5-minute debate on whether to allow wind chimes again. And then, during the open comment section, I stood up. I wasn't aggressive. I didn't yell. I kept it calm, even though my hands were shaking and my heart was pounding like I was about to defuse a bomb. I laid it all out. Everything. The forged violation, the security guard, the gate, the police, the fines. I ended by asking, flat out, whether Karen had the board's approval when she took those actions against us. Silence. Dead, awkward, shame-filled silence. And then Karen smiled. That same smug, polished, teeth-too-white smile that made your skin crawl. "Thank you for your input, Mr. Hunter," she said sweetly. "We'll take it under advisement." She banged her little gavel. Meeting adjourned, just like that. Ted wouldn't make eye contact on the way out. One of the neighbors, an older guy I used to chat with during dog walks, put a hand on my shoulder as I passed. He didn't say anything, just nodded like he wanted me to know he saw it too. The next morning, another violation letter showed up. This time, it said our mailbox was exceeding standard height regulations by 1 inch. That mailbox had been installed by the builder, same as every other house on the block. I didn't sleep much after that. Neither did Allison. The stress was constant, like an alarm that never stopped ringing, just shifted pitch. Every time we walked outside, I felt like we were being watched. Every time the phone rang and the number wasn't saved, my stomach dropped. I kept telling myself to be patient, that maybe the next complaint would reach the right person, that someone on the board would grow a spine, that there had to be somebody in this neighborhood who still believed in fairness, but nothing changed. Instead, it got worse. The HOA sent us a notice threatening lien action if we didn't pay our outstanding balance, which now included over $2,300 in fines, late fees, and administrative charges. They were building a paper case against us, trying to make us look like bad neighbors, irresponsible, problematic, like we didn't belong. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed one night, lights off, Allison asleep beside me, and thinking, this is how they win. They wear you down, not with drama, but with repetition. With cold, relentless bureaucracy, you stop fighting because it's easier. You give in just to feel normal again. And for the first time, I actually thought about giving up. About paying the fines, about selling the house, about leaving. But then I opened Allison's screenshots again. All those charges, all those payments to Apex Development. Thousands and thousands of dollars, most labeled consulting, site improvement, or long-term infrastructure. And that's when I saw it, a note. One line buried in a maintenance invoice. Apex Dev, Phase 2. Audit meeting held at President Sloan's residence. That wasn't just shady, that was proof. And just like that, the fog in my head started to clear. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't paranoid. This wasn't just some bored woman on a power trip. Karen was hiding something. And I was done playing nice. I wasn't even looking for it when I found it. Allison had gone to bed early. She was wiped from another 14-hour day at the clinic. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the HOA portal open, going through those screenshots again. Not sure what I was hoping for. Maybe some mistake. A name I recognized. A sign someone else was in on this besides Karen. But instead, I found something no one was supposed to see. There was a folder buried under Archived Projects, mislabeled as Landscape Assessment 2018. I only clicked it because I thought maybe there'd be a blueprint or a vendor name we could trace. What I got instead was a zip file. One click. And suddenly I was staring at a spreadsheet titled Riverside Phase 2 Development Timeline, Apex Confidential. It had nothing to do with landscaping, nothing even close. It was a full proposal to sell off a section of the neighborhood, including the greenbelt behind my house, for commercial development. Offices, luxury condos, a parking structure. The whole thing already mapped out. Estimated profits, contractor bids, environmental waivers, everything. And at the bottom, a list of liaisons and facilitators set to receive allocations upon zoning approval. Second name on that list, Karen Sloan, $75,000. I stared at it for a long time. That number didn't move. That name didn't change. It was right there, in writing, clear as day. She wasn't just power tripping. She wasn't just harassing us for sport. She was cashing in on the neighborhood. That greenbelt? It wasn't just some trees behind our yard. It was protected land. It was part of the original community charter, meant to remain untouched as a buffer between developments. Kids played there, families walked their dogs there. It was part of what made Riverside worth living in. And Karen was getting ready to bulldoze it for a fat payout. Suddenly, the fake violations made sense. The bogus fines, the public shaming. She wasn't just targeting us at random, she was clearing the field, getting rid of anyone who might raise a fuss once the construction started. And we were at the top of that list. I felt a cold pressure settle in my chest, that deep, heavy weight that tells you this just got real, because I knew what this was now. This wasn't petty. This wasn't personal. This was a cover-up, and we were the only ones standing in the way. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark kitchen with my laptop rereading that document like I thought it might disappear. I backed it up in 3 different places. USB, encrypted cloud drive, even printed it. Twice. The next morning, I showed it to Allison. She read the whole thing silently. No reaction, just a long exhale at the end. She looked at me and said, "We burn it down." Not literally, obviously. But the system? The scam? Karen's entire web of lies? Yeah, we were going to light that up. I knew this was bigger than us now. Way bigger. We weren't just fighting back for our driveway or our mailbox or some made-up ordinance about firewood. We were fighting for the whole neighborhood. And Karen? She had no idea the storm she'd just called down on herself. First thing I did was get my buddy Nate on the phone. We hadn't talked in months, not since his daughter's birthday party where I accidentally dropped a beer into their koi pond. But I knew if anyone could help me figure out the legal end of this, it was him. Nate's not just a lawyer. He's the kind of lawyer people call before they call their actual lawyer. The guy loves paperwork the way normal people love dogs. I sent him the zip file and waited while he combed through it. Took him about a day. Then he called me with this very calm, very surgical tone like he was about to dissect a corpse. "This is bad," he said. "Like goes on the news bad." I asked if we had enough to go to the state attorney general. He said yes, but it would take more than just the spreadsheet. We needed corroboration, witnesses, a paper trail that wasn't just digital, because you know damn well Karen's going to scream fabrication the second this hits daylight. He said, "You're building a case? You need layers. Make it airtight." So that's what I started doing. I dug into the HOA's financial records again, this time with surgical precision. Allison helped where she could. She's not a techie, but she's got this incredible attention to detail, and nothing gets past her when she's in the zone. We spent nights at the kitchen table like we were running a war room. She'd highlight weird payment patterns. I'd trace the shell companies they were going to. And every time we found something that didn't smell right, we filed it away. We found more payments to Apex Development, hidden under infrastructure review, green zone revisions, security upgrades, all BS labels, and they all tied back to one bank account, one that wasn't listed on any official contractor documentation. We also started paying close attention to the people on the board. A few of them were clearly just scared of Karen, Ted especially. Poor guy looked like a man who got his lunch money stolen every day and just accepted it. But then there was Denise Harper. Denise was the treasurer. Mid-50s, sharp eyes. She always seemed like she wanted to say something during meetings but didn't. We figured if anyone was going to crack, it'd be her, so I invited her over. No pressure, just casual. Coffee and banana bread. Told her I had some questions about the HOA's latest finds, played dumb at first. But somewhere between the coffee and her second slice, Allison asked very gently, "Did you authorize the budget increases for Phase 2 last quarter?" Denise blinked. Twice. Then she said, "I never saw a vote." That's when I showed her the spreadsheet. She went pale. She didn't say much after that, but I could tell the wheels were turning. She asked for a copy. I gave her one. Didn't even ask her to promise anything. Just said, "If this is what we think it is, people deserve to know." That night, I started building the presentation. Not just a folder or a list of files. A full-on drop-the-mic slideshow. Screenshots, dates, payments, recorded statements. Every shell company traced, every contract red flagged. I even built a timeline that matched the violations Karen issued against homeowners with how close their properties were to the proposed development site. It painted a very, very clear picture. Karen wasn't running an HOA. She was clearing a path for a land grab, one that would pay her out while gutting the neighborhood's value. And anyone who stood in her way, well, we knew what happened to them. We also needed media, public pressure. If we could get this on a local news station or a community blog, Karen wouldn't be able to bury it with procedure. But for that, we needed a smoking gun. Which is why I started watching her house. Not in a creepy way, I wasn't lurking in bushes with night vision goggles or anything. But I did set up a camera across the street, tucked behind a stack of moving boxes in the garage window of my neighbor Mike's place. He was happy to help. The guy hated Karen with a passion that bordered on religious. And guess what? Within 4 days, we got footage of a guy from Apex Development walking straight into her house. Not for a meeting, not with paperwork, just a backpack and a bottle of red wine. I checked his LinkedIn. Regional Vice President of Land Acquisitions. Boom, that was the missing link. The real-life, walking conflict of interest, on video, entering the private residence of the woman funneling HOA contracts his way. Ray, Detective Kowalski, helped us format the footage properly. I didn't even have to ask. Once I told him what we found, he just said, "Tell me when you're ready to drop it." We were almost there, but I wanted one last card in my hand, something nobody could argue with. So I called an old contact from my Army days, Camille, a digital forensics specialist who now worked in federal fraud investigations. I asked her to take a look at the metadata on the documents, just to be sure they weren't doctored or altered after the fact. 2 days later, she sent back her report. Everything checked out. And with that, we were locked and loaded. Presentation, done, documents, verified, witnesses, ready, footage, clear as day. We had the kind of case that makes people resign overnight and pretend they moved to Florida. But I wasn't going to give Karen the chance to slip away quietly. If she was going to go down, she was going to go down loud. We hit send on a Friday. Allison stood behind me with her hand on my shoulder, and I swear it felt like we were launching a missile. The email went out to every homeowner in the neighborhood, CC'd to the county zoning board, the local news tip line, and just for good measure, the state attorney general's office. Subject line: Riverside HOA fraud, full evidence attached. The second it was gone, my adrenaline dropped so fast I nearly passed out. I hadn't even realized I was holding my breath. I turned to Allison and just said, "No going back now." And there really wasn't. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Neighbors, reporters, HOA board members. People I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly calling like we were lifelong friends. Some were shocked, some furious, a few just embarrassed they hadn't noticed. One of the first texts came from Denise Harper, the treasurer. All it said was, "You were right. I'm in. Let's clean house." But it wasn't all cheers and backslaps. Karen fired back. Hard. By Monday, we had a cease and desist letter taped to our door, hand-delivered, not mailed, like she wanted to make sure we felt it, claimed we were spreading defamatory and malicious falsehoods about her and the HOA, that we were undermining community governance and endangering board members' reputations. It was laughable, but still, she was clearly rattled. What I didn't expect was what she did next. She called a special emergency session of the board and tried to have our membership rights revoked. Full ban. No voting, no meetings, no community access. Said we had violated the HOA's good faith participation clause. I showed up to the meeting anyway. Ray came with me, not in uniform, just as backup. Karen looked like she'd swallowed a lemon when she saw him. I could practically hear her jaw clicking as she forced a smile. "This is a private board session, Mr. Hunter," she said, already clinging to protocol. "Cool," I said. "And this is a public fraud investigation." I dropped the packet on the table in front of her, a printed version of the full evidence file. Tabs, highlights, footnotes. We weren't messing around. "Funny," I added. "Your development partner's LinkedIn says he lives in Atlanta, but he seems to like spending a lot of time in your guest room." Karen tried to brush it off, tried to play it like we were twisting things out of context, but the other board members weren't having it anymore. Not after the news report that hit the same day where a local anchor aired the Apex proposal, highlighting that Karen's name appeared under anticipated profit recipients. Even Ted looked like he was considering flipping on her just to save himself. And that's when Karen did something I never saw coming. She doubled down, tried to rally the neighbors, started going door to door, spinning some wild story about me and Allison being anti-community radicals, trying to dissolve the HOA entirely. Said we were planning to file lawsuits that would bankrupt the neighborhood and bring in outside developers who'd destroy Riverside. I couldn't believe it. She'd turned full cult leader. For a couple days, it almost worked. A few neighbors got spooked. I caught one of them on Nextdoor posting that we were trying to drag everyone into our personal vendetta. Allison's coworkers even heard about it through the grapevine. The whole thing was snowballing fast. But then something flipped. It was Denise again. She went public, sent out her own statement, separate from the HOA, explaining that she had personally reviewed our evidence and found substantial discrepancies in the financials. She mentioned off-book payments, unauthorized budget increases, and the fact that the Apex development deal was never approved by the full board. It hit like a thunderclap. Suddenly, Karen wasn't the voice of Riverside anymore. She was just loud. Then came the petitions. Dozens of homeowners signed to call a special election, not next year. Now they wanted a full board review, a vote on Karen's removal, and for the first time since she started her little fiefdom, she couldn't stop it. The board called an open hearing. Karen tried to shut it down, claimed the bylaws didn't allow it, but Ray had already pulled up the Articles of Incorporation and highlighted the clause that said any member could call for a recall with a petition of 25% or more of the neighborhood. We had 68%, so they scheduled it. Karen must have known she was cooked because she got nasty after that. I got a weird anonymous letter accusing me of tax fraud, so poorly written it looked like it was printed from a burner email. Our recycling bin was accidentally knocked over 3 times in 1 week. A few neighbors even got violation notices for affiliating with disruptive households. But none of it stuck. We'd flipped the script, and now Karen was the one scrambling. The board meeting came, packed to the walls. People stood in the hallway. Some even brought lawn chairs. It looked more like a town hall than an HOA meeting. Karen tried to control it, banged her gavel so hard it cracked. But nobody listened. They listened to us. To Denise. To the woman who stood up and said, Karen threatened to fine me if I didn't stop talking to the hunters. To the dad who said, I didn't realize my backyard was going to be turned into a parking garage. To the retired vet who said, this isn't a neighborhood anymore, it's her kingdom. That was the moment, right there. The power shifted. And Karen? She saw it too. You could see it in her face. That tight-lipped panic, that glimmer of disbelief. Like she couldn't comprehend that people she'd ruled over for years were suddenly looking at her like a fraud. She left early that night, didn't say a word, didn't even take her gavel. Which was fine, because we were already carving her name off the plaque. It was surreal watching her fall. I mean, after everything Karen put us through, the fines, the lies, the intimidation, calling the cops on us for standing in our own driveway, part of me thought she'd somehow slither her way out of this, that she'd pull a last-minute move, twist the rules again, call in some legal favor. But nope. This time, the curtain didn't just fall. It caught fire on the way down. The recall vote passed in a landslide, something like 92% in favor of immediate removal, and not just Karen. 2 of her cronies went with her, including that Bluetooth guy who always looked like he was halfway through an imaginary phone call. Ted, bless his anxious heart, actually voted for the recall himself. Quietly, but it counted. Denise stepped in as interim president. First order of business, full audit. Second, public forum. Not behind closed doors, not in the clubhouse with the sign-in sheet and passive-aggressive name tags. I'm talking full-on town, square vibes. Folding chairs on the greenbelt, speakers, even a mic stand. Families brought snacks. One guy brought a cooler of beer. Someone played Tom Petty on a Bluetooth speaker and no one complained. And then they let me speak. I didn't plan a speech. Wasn't trying to make it a courtroom drama or a TED Talk. I just told the truth. Told them how it started with a single violation notice that didn't make sense. How that spiraled into surveillance, fines, threats. How I thought we were losing our minds until the receipts started piling up and everything clicked. How this place we'd made our home was being auctioned off piece by piece under the table while we were all being distracted with mailbox heights and lawn edging rules. I could see the shock hit different people at different times. Some nodded slowly, others just stared down at their laps like they'd been punched in the gut. I didn't blame them. Karen had made herself look like the protector of this place, the neighborhood's gatekeeper. She'd fooled a lot of folks for a long time. But then Denise took the mic. She laid out the audit results, line by line, unapproved contracts, misdirected payments, backdated minutes, false committee votes that were never actually held. The Greenbelt wasn't just being scouted, it was already optioned. Apex Development had submitted the paperwork to the county zoning office 4 months earlier. All it needed was one last HOA signature. Karen's. And the payout? $75,000, wired in 3 installments to a private LLC tied to a P.O. box in New Mexico. I swear you could feel the oxygen leave the park when Denise said it. And just when I thought the night couldn't get any wilder, Ray stepped up. Yup. Detective Kowalski, in his jeans and plain tee, walked right up to the mic and said, calm as you like. Based on the documents provided and the patterns of financial misconduct, this case is now part of an active investigation. He didn't say criminal, but he didn't have to. Karen's name was already radioactive. I didn't see her after that. Some people said she moved out of her house that weekend, middle of the night, no notice. Others say she's holed up with family in Colorado, doesn't matter. Her grip on the neighborhood was broken, completely. The county froze all pending development around the Greenbelt. There's talk of turning it into a protected wildlife corridor now, with community input. The HOA got restructured, real elections, transparent budgets, no more surprise meetings or secret ballots. And our fines wiped clean, all of them, every bogus charge. In fact, we got a check, partial reimbursement for the legal fees we spent fighting her, funded from Karen's personal escrow account after she resigned. Even better, our story went viral. Someone from the local news leaked the footage of Karen's wine night business meetings and it hit a national HOA reform group. Next thing we knew, there was a podcast episode about it. Then an article. Then a second article quoting the first article. I had people emailing me from Arizona and Michigan asking if I could help them with their HOA battles. It was hilarious. Allison made a joke about printing "I survived Karen Sloan" t-shirts. Then someone actually did. But the best part? It was quiet again. No more threats, no more weird men in security vests at our gate, no more walking out to get the mail with my fists half clenched. Just peace. And neighbors actually talking again. Really talking. Kids back in the park. Couples walking their dogs without side eyes or whispered gossip. It felt like the neighborhood had come out of a coma. Funny thing, I still have that first violation notice. Framed it, actually. It's on the wall in my garage. Little reminder that sometimes the thing that breaks you open is the same thing that sets you free. Life's quiet now. Not boring. Just quiet in a way that feels earned. I mow the lawn on Saturdays without wondering if someone's snapping a photo from their living room. Allison and I started a little vegetable patch along the fence line. Her idea, even though she still can't tell cilantro from parsley. We laugh more. We sleep better. I think part of us forgot what it was like to live without constant tension humming in the background like bad wiring. Sometimes I still catch myself tensing up when I get mail from the HOA, but now it's stuff like community barbecue or budget transparency workshop. You know, actual neighborhood things, normal things. Ted even hand-delivered our new ID stickers last week with a smile like he'd just come back from summer camp. Guy seems 10 years younger without Karen breathing down his neck. And Denise? She's doing great. She ended up running for HOA president officially and won in a landslide. No one even ran against her. First meeting she hosted had donuts, a suggestion box, and 0 gavel slamming. People left smiling. I honestly didn't think that was possible anymore. The Greenbelt's safe. We put up those little handmade signs, protected by the people of Riverside. It's kinda corny, but it means something now. Kids still ride their bikes down the path behind our house. We hear them laughing through the kitchen window while we cook dinner. That used to annoy me once upon a time. Now I smile every time I hear it. You know, there was a moment right in the middle of it all when I almost gave up. When I sat on the floor in my own hallway surrounded by fine letters and fake citations and thought, they're gonna win. I'm gonna lose everything I've built. Not just the house, but the sense that I mattered in my own damn life. But I didn't lose. Not really? Because standing up, even when it sucked, even when it felt like yelling into the void, proved something to me. That silence isn't safety, that compliance isn't peace, and that sometimes the only way to fix a place you love is to piss off every powerful person in it, one truth at a time. I'm not some hero. I didn't save the world, I just saved my corner of it. And now, it's a good corner. No signs on my gate, no cameras in the trees, just home.